Jason wants to find out if Cox successfully broke through the mountain range and has arranged to meet a local historian, Babette Smith, who lives deep in the heart of the mountains.
It's been a phenomenal discovery to sort of even come to terms with the fact an ancestor of mine had anything to do with, you know, the development of Australia. I guess in those days, you know, beyond the mountains could have been more sea.
Well, yes.
They could have been, it could have been,
exactly.
Sydney could have been an island as far as they knew.
There was a lot of speculation that there was an inland sea.
Right.
The Europeans have been looking at the mountains for 25 years. And they kept running up against a rock wall like that one.
Sure. And how did William Cox sort of fit into that?
Well, he was already known to Macquarie as a very enterprising man. He'd been involved in building some buildings and the odd bridge. But when the need to get over the mountains and find some better pastures was suddenly urgent, it was Cox that Macquarie turned to.
Right.
Let's go.
Yeah, come on, after you.
By September the 12th, 1814, Cox and his team of convict workers had constructed 21 miles of road and were now ensconced in the heart of the mountains. The traces of the original road have long since overgrown into a footpath.
This is the most significant bit that's left.
Pretty sort of rough terrain too.
Yes.
Babette wants to show Jason what Cox considered to be the most difficult part to negotiate. On November the 2nd, 1814, after 4 months of construction, Cox and his team had built 60 miles of road up into the mountains as far as Mount York. But now they hit the daunting prospect of finding a way down a cliff face that involved a 1,000-meter sheer drop.
This is an extremely dangerous piece of land here, very dramatic.
Cox actually called it the Herculean Mountain because when he came here himself, he could see the size of the task ahead of him.
Right.
And he rode up and down that ridge we've just come along, and he said to the men who were working for him, "I'll give anyone who can find a better way down a reward.
Really?
But otherwise," he said, "this is where I'm going to put the road."
Wow. I would suggest that you'd have to find a way of working with the landscape because you know, how do you get a road down that?
That's right, yes. In the team of people he had with him, it's notable that he chose people that had been in the country for a while. They weren't fresh off a boat. They knew the landscape, but they'd probably had some experience coping with sandstone cliffs like that.
Right,
that's men, convict men, cutting the Western Road.
So sort of tearing its way down.
Yes, they're really cutting through a section of rock at that point. But yes, he had to find a way to get lower in stages.
To help Jason get an idea of what his ancestor was up against, Babette has brought along a copy of William Cox's memoirs.
So have a little
Try
look.
page 73, there's a couple of interesting quotes there.
November the 2nd. The mountain road. Fine morning, thunder with light showers, sent 3 men again to examine the descent of the mountain and ascertained that there is no other way but from the bluff originally marked. Tomorrow I intend going to survey it, as a road must be made to get off the mountain. November 3. At 6 this morning went forward with Lewis to examine the mountain at the end of the ridge. Found it much worse than I expected. It opens with a very steep gully in front, and towards the left it falls off so steep that it is with much difficulty a person can get down at all. Immediately after leaving it, we crossed a small swamp to look at another ridge, when my horse got stuck in a bog and plunged until he fell. I received no hurt, but we got wet though. So he wasn't scared of...
No, he came right off. He says here, took his clothes off and wrung them and left them in the sun.
Right.
Well, he must have wandered round his undies, I guess.
Perfect. So he's, again...
He wasn't going to let her fall off a horse and getting dunked in the water
Put him off.
faze him.
Yeah.
No. In that sense, he was sort of a prototype for what became the best kind of Australian leader. The only kind, really, that those very tough convict men would respect. Somebody who really got down to it and was tough, as they were.
And transcended class.
Yes, class, again, that's also very important in Australia, as you know.
Big theme.
He didn't put on side in terms of class at all. He treated the men as equals and looked after them as equals.
Cox's strategy to zigzag down the mountain by building tiers paid off. On January the 14th, 1815, Cox and his 30 men laid the final stretch of road across the fertile plains beyond the Blue Mountains. As their reward, every convict worker was given their freedom for completing the task 6 times faster than estimated, in just 6 months. The 101-mile construction became the main artery linking Sydney with the interior, as settlers flocked to stake their claims in the new territory. The road became instrumental in the eventual transformation of a penal colony into a nation. In April of that year, Governor Macquarie drove his horse and cart along its length for the first time. Afterwards, he paid this tribute to William Cox.
To the astonishment of everyone who knows what was to be encountered and sees what has been done, he effected its completion in 6 months from the time of its commencement, happily without the loss of a man or any serious accident. That is phenomenal. The Governor is at a loss to appreciate fully the services rendered by Mr. Cox to this colony in the execution of this arduous work, which promises to be of great public utility by opening a new source of wealth, which is exactly the question I was going to say. Again, we go back to this, it was only a road, but yes. You forget that a road in those days
had enormous significance.
Enormous significance.
Oh, William Cox is a great ancestor to have, of such real importance to us in Australia.
William Cox died on March the 15th, 1837. He was 72 years old. His road was the crowning glory of an extraordinary life. Although his legacy has long since been superseded by a new western highway through the Blue Mountains, at certain points today's road still follows traces of Cox's original route.
Having spent so many years living in the UK, you tend to forget your origins. You tend to forget what you're about. The interesting story really is the convict in Joseph Lyons and the gentry, I guess, of William Cox, and how Australia is defined by a sort of classless society. Both sides of my ancestry resonate with what is essentially the backbone of this country, which is a society that sort of is aspirational in the sense that it is based on merit. I have to say this journey has made me very proud to be an Australian. Very proud of this equal society, this new frontier is God's country, really. We all have a history. We're all someone's daughter and someone's son. I'm glad that I've touched base with essentially what is the Australian in me. Which, you know, I have to say, originates from my mother. That's a good thing.